This is a very wonderful question that Brother Moses Younger you have asked as to where is it written in the message of the Shepherd's Road that the HQ was to move from the east. It was to move from Waco, Texas to Salem. Okay. Um, in answering this question, Brother Moses, you'll be able to see that I don't know. I'm just coming in because Brother Chilara did not finish his presentation, for which I hope as he comes to the close, he was supposed to touch these, or he would touch them because he was still on the floor before Baishan or any other were called in. So when we start the study, where it starts, you find that it starts with the angel of Revelation chapter 7, when he started to ascend from the east and then going to the west. And so, for those that would like to follow everything, we see that what we are told in Shepherd's Road Pocket Edition, page 10, was that the angel from the east had been ascending, and he finally landed in California in the year 1929, and the scroll began to unroll, and the people started to feel the angel's presence. This is also repeated when you look at Shepherd's Road, volume 1, looking at the page 21, I think. Yeah, because I didn't bring this to the fore because I've seen that maybe it is quiet, so that as we are waiting a detailed response, I would give you a brief one. Yeah, so when you look at that announcement, it is showing that the scroll began to unroll, and then the people of God started to feel the presence of the angel. And so that arrival of the angel in the west is connected now to when the prophet himself was writing with the movement from California to Waco, Texas. He said that that eastward course was to be seen in the mighty river of Ezekiel 47. So we see that the connection between Revelation chapter 7 and Ezekiel 47 is the one that necessitates the eastward movement. And so you see that just like the Shepherd's Road was able to quote the writings of Ellen White, that the visions she had in the eastern side of America, okay, uh, is a signal that the angel started his ascent to the west, and then he finally arrived. So we see that the arrival of the message that we call the Shepherd's Road is indicative of the sealing angel that started his ascent from the west. And so when you pick it up now in the Shepherd's Road Volume 2, especially when now it is looking at the mighty river of Ezekiel 47, you find that it connects now that eastward direction and the east itself and all those, we see that the message that arrived was to do away with idolatry. And so when now you go back, like part of what Brother Chilara also had quoted in his studies was uh, looking at what Ellen White had written, because when we say in the Shepherd's Road, then we are reducing the power of what we are given as Davidians. Because what we are given as Davidians is what is contained in the bow. And in the bow, we have two golden pipes that the Lord used to pour this extra oil, which we see that the first pipe is Ellen White and the second pipe is V.T. Hotef. And so, even when you go to our tracks, tell us that get your doctrines from the bow. So when you go now to the bow, you find that when you connect Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, pages 146 to 149, that now Sister White was discussing things related to the east and the west, and that God was moving hearts in the west to receive the truth. And so that is where you see that once the truth has been gained in the west, it was to go eastward as it was conquering idolatry. Now, just like fast forward, because I know maybe a detailed one will come, because we want to give simple answers as we have been advised. So we see that when they were settled at the Waco, we are told that they followed the eastward stream as it was going east. And a time came, according to the symbolic code number 10, that the prophet said that Waco had done its work, and the time of selling that was come, and it was subdivided and sold. But before the prophet could make a final statement on it, we are told that he died. Okay? Now, going back to the bow, because we have everything, just like I can give an example of Cyrus and his reign. You find that Isaiah had written about it. So when Cyrus attended to the throne and he was told what was written about him 700 years, he came and understood what God was saying, and he fulfilled that purpose. And so even us going back to inspiration, this time in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, page 414, we find that God now tells us something very interesting to say. Ellen White saw a company that was raised up in the East who will consistently obey the truth. And so you find that those are the things that help us to understand the eastward course and what God Himself says about it. Yeah, so basically, I've given it in brief, Brother Move. I don't know if you have other rider questions. And as we wait for Chirara also to conclude, then we'll see how far that would go, because the question is just directed at where that is written. So I've given the best of my knowledge as to the eastward movement and where you can find those quotes that can be able to help on that one. Thank you so very much. Yeah, so sorry, Brother Move. Also, another additional aspect is that whilst the prophet himself was also alive, we had a rest home in Salem that was an annex of the HQ in Waco, Texas. Yeah, so those are some of the parameters that are used and found in the record of inspiration as to those eastward movement and why Salem in particular. Thank you. Greetings once again, brothers and sisters. This question that Brother Move had posed really touches my heart, because it is one of the questions that helps to actually understand more of why we as the Davidians were to move eastwards. But particularly the question is saying, uh, did we have an announcement, or is it written in the road that the HQ must be in Salem or Salem area? So I thought of adding to what, like I mentioned, where Brother Chilala started the last time around, where we see that everything starts from the Revelation 7 and then goes to connect with Ezekiel 47, that the prophet himself was able to bring together those things. Yeah, so before I give everything from the start, like Brother Chilala did, I just want to zero in especially on the Salem name itself and why some Davidians like us are in the east and in Salem. Yeah, so I'll forward two quotations and then give some background information so that we understand that the choice was not just arbitrary to say, no, we want to be in Salem, but it is because that was a land that was part and parcel of the association, just like Waco was, except Waco, we see that there was a time that it served as the Lord's association, and then the prophet decided to sell it because we are told to say its work was done. and that is why we feel that we could not return to Waco because it had fulfilled its purpose and it was subdivided, as we'll be able to share a few quotations. Okay, so let me begin by sharing a quote and maybe make a statement or two so that we may be able to at least bring Brother Move and any other that would want to understand more why there are those of us Davidians who feel that the Lord desired that we should be in the east and why Salem in particular. All right. All right, beloved brothers and sisters. So when you look at this quote coming from 10 symbolic code number 2, page 9, paragraph 1, there is some wonderful information that we get there. I read in your hearing. It says, on May 29, a special meeting was held in Salem, South Carolina, for field workers and Davidians in that area. It was held shortly before the field workers left for Pennsylvania and other eastern points. Davidians came from considerable distances to attend, and recordings were made of the meetings. According to the recordings and other reports, we have learned that the gathering was profitable, and especially for those in Salem, among whom a long-standing and grievous misunderstanding over the rest home had just before the meetings been ironed out. So you can see, beloved, that before the field workers were given the opportunity to visit Pennsylvania and the other eastern points, they had to meet there and see how best they will be able to move from there. So we can see here that Salem, South Carolina, became more like a center or the entry point, or should we say the point where people were supposed to be able to visit the eastern points. So because the main point is that we are looking at why in the east people were to settle there. So we see that it was not an arbitrary choice on the part of those that settled in Salem area, because we see that even at the time of the recording of 10 symbolic code number 2, page 9, paragraph 1, it shows that it had some important points in connection with the eastern points of the United States, of course. So we see that this becomes one of the very interesting points that we get from there. So we see that the name Salem is attached also or connected to the eastern points, as we see from that one over there. All right. Okay, so the next one is also from 10 symbolic code number 2, reading on page 25, paragraph 5, where we see that there is also something in connection with the Salem, South Carolina. Okay, here we are told that this was in connection with the Davidian Youth Society, and I'm sure in due time we shall be able to also see the connections that the Lord was able to give us in this wonderful discourse that we have through the experiences of those our brethren that we learned through the presentation by Brother Chirara, where he ended about the movement of those faithful brothers, the Davidians that gathered themselves in Southern California, Riverside to be specific, in 1961, who resolved from that point on that they would be able to follow the eastward course of the mighty river of Ezekiel 47, just as the prophet and those that left Southern California did. And so we see that they too followed or settled at least in a place that was initially associated with the association itself. So we see that Salem, South Carolina, was one of the association's places, as we can see from the following quote. It says, during the past year, two young people have served terms as president of the Davidian Youth Society. The first was John Campbell, and when he was transferred to Salem, South Carolina, to operate the association's rest home there, all the youth were sorry to see him go. Faith Leigh was elected to take over the presidency, and she has admirably filled her office. So what we are getting from here, beloved, is this, that Salem was not just a choice from people who just like woke up from a dream and say, no, we are going to settle in Salem. It is because of these statements that we have just seen that it was part of the association's property. So its choice, as we see, beloved, and I like when Brother Chirala started the study to show us that actually, according to Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, which I'll be, okay, let me just maybe quote it and then we'll be able to discuss it, because I'm just interested in the portion of Brother Chirala's question, I mean, Brother Move's question, so that at least we may be able to shed light to say our choice of Salem area is not because we just dreamt or maybe there was any other. No, it was part and parcel of the property of the association itself. And our settling on it, it is because it was on the eastern side of the United States of America, even as the prophet was moving the association's headquarters from Los Angeles to Waco. It was following that mighty river. And as Salem was also part and parcel of the property of the association, we see that indeed this is what the message so far offers and names in connection with the East and everything. So these are some of the quotes that help us greatly. Yeah, so that is what I wanted to say on that one. All right, so the other portion that I had mentioned, which is so cardinal in connection with these things that I've shared so far, is what was prophesied and recorded in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, page 414, paragraph 1, the first part of it. It says, Ellen White records the following, says, according to the light which God has given me, there will yet be a large company raised up in the East to consistently obey the truth. Those who follow in the distracted course they have chosen will be left to embrace errors which will finally cause their overthrow. But they will, for a time, be stumbling blocks to those who would receive the truth. So, we see, beloved, that it was prophesied that God was going to raise a large company in the East. And that large company, we are told to say, it was to consistently obey the truth. This quote partly answers the original question that I found on this platform, that was in relation to why do we have so many headquarters? Okay? Why is each one claiming to be the headquarter of God? So we can see that claiming the way we can, we can do that. But God is saying, that many who will not follow this large company that will be raised in the East means they will not be consistent in obeying the truth. So they will choose what they want away from the company raised in the East. And so we are to say whatever they will fall, whatever they will choose, God calls it to say it is a distracted course. Or maybe they will veer off the path of being consistent with the truth. And so these, we are told to say, they will embrace errors which will finally cause their overthrow. So we see that the development and living of those that will veer off the course will be such that errors will be part of their belief systems, in short. And we are taught to say because of receiving those errors, they will be overthrown by them. But now, this is where it gets interesting, where it says, but they will, for a time, be stumbling blocks to those who would receive the truth. So, meaning, as people embrace errors, as they veer off the course, they will be overthrown. But their overthrow will not happen instantly. But as inspiration is showing, it will be that they will, for a time being, or for the time, be stumbling blocks to those who would receive the truth. So, meaning the truth will be with those that God will raise up as a company in the East. Yet there will be others who will be stumbling blocks to those who would receive the truth. So that's why I was saying the other day that we shouldn't worry so much that there are many associations. But our major worry should be the association that we have chosen. Is it consistent with the truth? And if it is consistent in the truth, where is it located? Because these are very important points that inspiration brings to bear. Okay? So we must be attached to these people that are in the East. Okay, I'll share something also from Ezekiel 9, but before I do, I want us to appreciate what God is telling us here, that what will save us, beloved, is consistently obeying the truth and being able to be joined to the large company that the Lord will raise up in the East, who will consistently obey the truth. And so many people tend to ask, to say, which East is this? Because others tend to push the East as far as Jerusalem. Yes, we know that there will be a company raised in Jerusalem who will form a kingdom. But when we look at that, there is no rejecting the truth that when God is speaking about this company that is raised in the East, it will have others that will be embracing errors and be destroyed, that there will be stumbling blocks to those who should receive the truth. So you can see that God is showing us that even before the kingdom is set up, this will be. And what will happen will be able to help us understand clearly as to what God is trying to communicate to us. So these Brother Sianga, and those that would want to understand are the reasons that we find ourselves sticking to the East as far as possible in endeavoring to take this truth. And I'm sure uh, if we remember correctly, like those of our, okay, maybe let me shorten the voice note. I continue in the next. Yeah, so as I was saying, most of us would remember that, like those that are in Mountaindale, those that are at Waco now, most of them were part and parcel of these Californian beloved brothers that started the work in Riverside and then realized that they had to move uh, eastwards, and they came to Salem Rest Home, which was a part of the association's properties. Okay, so everyone else had no problem with that. But just like what we read in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, page 414, had indicated that theories would begin, or errors would begin to be embraced. I'm not here to discredit anyone, nor to say this one embraced errors, but just to give a direction to say, when there was a lesson in connection with the truth of the 144,000 and those with them, that these 144,000, we are going to have those with them who are living saints. There was a split. So we see that the splits at Salem are not the first one. Just like Brother Moby was asking, say 3 splits. Even Waco was just a splinter group from Salem Association. Because at that time, Waco brethren were not even existing. So basically, what had happened was all those that were gathered at Salem began to share or to learn something that was presented in the line of the 144,000 going with living saints to the kingdom. And people were opposed to that teaching. And so those that were opposed to that teaching moved northeast of Salem and founded what was called Mountaindale headquarters. Okay, so that is where those our brethren went. And so those that went that direction, again, there was a split amongst them. Okay, where we had people like our friend Norman Archer's group at Waco left Mountaindale and started buying back the former Mount Carmel Center, which was sold. And so we see that those who went to Waco again, there was again another split, and we have the wave shift. So in the main, beloved, you see that all of us, these groups that I've mentioned and many others that have maybe either formed independent or whatever, they originated from this understanding that a large company was to be raised up in the East. But because of one thing or the other, these splits happened. And so that is the traceable record that I have at least understood. I know maybe I may have missed one or two things, as we are all brethren and can be able to help one another. We can come in and help as we see to it that we understand all these things. So we see that the choice of Salem Rest Home was not a dream or a thought of an individual, but it was because of the message and how it was dictating our eastward movement. And maybe when we shall touch, because I'm just touching points here and there just to help the questionnaire just get some glimpses as to why we have chosen to be associated with the eastward course and being found in Salem area of South Carolina, because this is what used to be part and parcel of our place. And as the area code I quoted was showing that even when they wanted to spread the message to the eastern points, they had to gather the field workers and everyone else. Uh, so we see that it was more like Salem was a central place for the sending out of those battering rams. All right. Okay, so another important quote that was uh, given us through the presentation was coming from Testimonies for the Church, volume 1 again. This time we start from page 146, paragraph 3, and the subtitle of the chapter 26 is The East and the West. So we see that even before the Davidian movement was born, pretty much like what we see when the angel of Revelation chapter 7 started ascending in 1844. We see that even the SDA church was not born. So these messages that depict the flow of truth, because the catchword, beloved, is this, that we should be consistently obeying the truth. So the way the truth is started, it had no name tag. It had people who were searching the truth. And as they were searching the truth, at the time that they were disappointed because of searching that truth, in the year 1844, we see that the angel started ascending from the east. Anyway, I will be able to show those quotes so that we coordinate everything well, because I know my brother did a good job on the part that I'm trying to put across there. So we see that inspiration gave this wonderful information concerning the East and the West. And we'll discover that the East in question is in America, and the West in question is still in America. So that when we connect these dots together, beloved, we'll be able to see that the Lord was communicating something very, very important. So, reading Testimonies for the Church, volume 1, page 146, paragraph 3 says, Dear brethren, the Lord has shown me in vision some things in regard to the East and the West, which I feel it my duty to set before you. I saw that God has been opening the way for the spread of the truth, of present truth in the West. It requires much more power to move the people in the East than in the West. And at present, but very little can be accomplished in the East. Special efforts should be made at the present time where most good will result. So what we are getting from this quote, beloved people of God, is this, that the Lord communicated to his people that there was present truth that was to be shared among his people. And at the time that God was giving this communication, it was seen that the work was not moving as fast as it should in the East, but rather the Lord had been opening ways in the West for the people to receive the truth there. And so these important statements, beloved, that we are reading are the ones that help us, especially those of us that would be able to follow the study uh, to its logical conclusion that our brother Obi Chilala started. We'll see that this quote from Testimonies for the Church, volume 1, is more like an expansion of the connection between the beginning of the message of Revelation 7 and its connection with the mighty river of Ezekiel 47 and its flow eastwards. even as we will see why. Because God will be able to speak to us in a language that will be able to understand the consistency that He is trying to build in our hearts. So we see that in order for the people to be made now to go and wait for the arrival of this angel who was to bring the sealing message in the West, hearts were to be touched and people were to be moved by God. So we are told to say special efforts were to be made. And so we'll see what special efforts were done. Okay, beloved people of God, continuing our discussion from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, we go to the second paragraph on page 147, where we read the following. It says, I saw that the people in the West could be moved much more easily than those in the East. They have not had the light of the truth and have not rejected it, and their hearts are more tender and susceptible to the truth and the Spirit of God. The hearts of many in the West are already prepared to eagerly receive the truth. And as the servants of God go out to labor for the salvation of precious souls, they have much to encourage them in their arduous work. As the people are anxious to hear, and many embrace the truth, the gift which God has given His servant is called out and strengthened. They see that their efforts were crowned with success. So we see, beloved, that Ellen White was able to give this wonderful prophecy concerning the East and the West as the Lord had showed her, that indeed there was going to be a time that the people in the West will be steered to receive the truth. I know most of us, we quote the letter to Eudai and Ross that the brethren in Southern California will find a blessing in reviewing the truth concerning the 144,000. But little do we know that preparatory to the brethren in Southern California to receive that wonderful truth, they were first to be prepared by the power of the Holy Spirit, that indeed they may be made ready for the arduous work. So, beloved, this work that we are in, it's not a simple work. Neither was it just to start in the West and remain there. It was to continue. And along the way, it had to reach and be strengthened by the gifts that God Himself was to give us. So we see that the efforts that we put in this work, beloved, must be crowned with success, provided we are consistent with truth. Okay, we now come to Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, page 147, paragraph 3. Sister White continues to give the vision of how the Holy Spirit was to work upon the hearts of the people, so that these things now should be well understood by us and well performed, beloved people of God. She says, I saw that tenfold more has been accomplished in the West than in the East with the same effort, and that the way is opening for still greater success. I have seen that much can be done at the present in Wisconsin and still more in Illinois, and that efforts to spread the truth must be made in Minnesota and Iowa. It will take effect in many hearts there. there was a large, very large field of labor spread out before me in vision, which has not yet been entered, but there is not self-sacrificing help enough to fill half the places where the people are already ready to hear the truth and many to receive it. So, as always, beloved, the field was ready, but the workers, even as it is today, are dilly-dallying. So imagine the Holy Spirit did his appointed work in preparing hearts, melting the hearts of the people to receive the truth. But very few were ready for this. And as we shall turn to the shepherd's word, beloved, you will be able to see what happened. So this preparatory work is very important for us to understand where the shepherd's rod will come and build up, because it is the Lord that had desired that his work must be in the east, in line with the expected arrival of that angel who started his ascent before the SDA was formed, before the Davidian movement was formed, and yet the truth was there of the eastward movement of the truth once it landed. So these are things that the Lord is showing us, that if we choose just to be Davidians anyhow, without following what God is giving, yes, we'll be called Davidians for a while. Yes, we'll be stumbling blocks to those who should receive the truth, as we shall be able to see what other portions like the White House Recruiter would also say about these things. So that now we can see that the foundation that the Lord was laying was so powerful for his people. All right, beloveds, we go to 1T, page 148, paragraph 3, where we want to continue with the thought that the Lord was able to work deeply as he has guided. So 1T, page 148, paragraph 3 says, I saw that special efforts should be made in the West with tents, for the angels of God are preparing minds there to receive the truth. This is why God has moved on some in the East to move to the West. Their gifts can accomplish more in the West than in the East. The burden of the work is in the West, and it is of greatest importance that the servants of God should move in his opening providence. So you see, beloved, that the people of God were not only seen in the vision to look and wait for this fulfillment, but that they too had special efforts that they were supposed to make with tents. So people moved from the east, beloved, left their homes, moved by the power of the Holy Spirit, and their gifts along with them. So you see, beloved, that there were sacrifices that people made in order for the truth that we are now appreciating was to be received or met. You see, here I can even make a small comment. This is basically, beloved, what we see in Early Writings, page 277, that Sister White also was given a vision of angels hurrying to and fro, preparing for some important event. And what was the important event? We all know it was the arrival of the fourth angel's message to unite his voice with the third. And this is basically what we see as we follow along this discussion that we are having, that this is the projection that God is giving us to say. In Testimonies for the Church, volume 1 says, for the angels of God are preparing minds there. So people's minds were supposed to be prepared in readiness to receive this truth. This is very, very important, beloved people of God. Let us not miss these important steps, because if we miss these ones and rush maybe only to the shepherd's rod, we will not have understood the foundation or the basis of the coming of that message. So we see that the power of the Holy Spirit was involved in this work. The presence of the angels was involved in this work. The gifts of the people was involved in this work. The people leaving their houses was involved in this business. The people spreading the truth in tents, it had to move like that, because we are told to say the burden of the work at some point was to be in the West. And this work was of greatest importance, that the servants of God should move in his opening providence. So when angels were hurrying to and fro in heaven, going up to heaven, coming down on earth, preparing for some important event, we know the important event was the arrival of the additional message. And that additional message is in connection with the angel of Revelation 7, as we will be able to see as we follow along. All right, beloved, let us turn to Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, page 149, paragraph 1. There we read the following. I saw that when the message shall increase greatly in power, then the providence of God will open and prepare the way in the east for much more to be accomplished than can be accomplished at the present time. God will then send some of his servants in power to visit places where little or nothing can now be done. And some who are now indifferent will be aroused and will take hold of the truth. So, you see, beloved, that when we see Brother Hotef and the members of the Davidian movement moving from the west eastward, this was prophesied, beloved, through the vision that Sister White has given us, that what was first needed was that the message which they will receive in the West should increase greatly in power. And what power increases that message, beloved, if not the additional message which we call the message of the shepherd's rod? So God was able to picture all these things through Sister White, that even when the Davidian movement now started to march along, they were not the originators of the eastward course of everything. It is God himself, as he projected that that sitting angel should begin his ascent in 1844, as we shall see, because that quote we are yet to read. So you see, beloved, that the message was to increase greatly in power. And when it has increased greatly in power, those people that when God was moving them, was asking them to go to the west in order to be prepared by the angels, to be prepared by the Holy Spirit to receive the truth. Once they receive that truth and it increases with power, then they were to make their eastward movement, so that now they will be accomplishing more in the east. Because we were taught to say, at the time that God wanted them in the west, it was more like a ratio of 10-1 between the east and the west. So if you can convert 10 people in the west in 1 hour, given the same effort of 1 hour in the east, you only convert 1. So you see that that ratio is what Sister White told us to say. There was 10-fold more in the west to be accomplished than in the east. And so, God did not say that just because he was sending his people to the west to receive the truth. You see, beloved, there was physical movement. People even going with tents to the west. So we as Davidians, when we started our movement from the west, we are simply showing that that vision was now being actualized as God had prepared it before we came in. Pretty much like the example I give of Cyrus. When you see people living in Babylon, suffering, and then Cyrus is born, they see everything as it was unfolding to say, oh, this is the life they are living. But when their attention, beloved, was turned to the word of God, they found that Cyrus was already named by the Lord, that he was the one that was going to fulfill the Lord's demand. And we see, beloved, that it was not by coincidence that the prophet had to even have Salem rest home as a part of the Waco Mount Carmel Center's property in the east. So it is only us, dear beloved, that are now discovering or trying to understand deeper into why the Lord had to scatter his truth the way he has done. It was for a reason. Because the Lord promised that his gems are scattered, and it is our duty to put them together for the benefit of everyone. And so we see, beloved, that this message that was to be received after the preparation of the angels, the Holy Spirit, the involvement of man and their efforts, their gifts, their talents, was to increase greatly in power. And once it did that, it had to take an eastward course. Continuing on, my beloved brothers, reading paragraph 2 of 1T, page 149, says that, I saw that God has warned those who have moved from the east to the west. So you see, just like we have been told that people literally moved, beloved, to the west. And God also communicated to those that were moving to the west. What was his commission? He says, he has shown them their duty, that it must not be their object to get rich, but to do good to souls, to live out their faith, and tell those around them that this world is not their home. So this a portion, which happens to be my last that I'm quoting from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, is of encouragement even to us up to this point, that it is not in the best interest of God that we, his laborers, should begin to think that the time has come that we should be rich. Just as he gave caution to those that were going to the west, so we see that their caution is our caution too. Our eyes should be for the salvation of souls. And so if we ourselves are consistent with truth, then the truth will set us free, and we shall be servants of God indeed. Now, we see that this is the part that the message of inspiration had to give us before the coming in of the additional message, to say there was need for God's people to move to the west, because that is where the angels were preparing hearts of people to receive the truth. And once the message arrived, so beloved, you see that these connections that we are finding from the message of the hour are not mistaken, but they are factual in the way God was giving them. Because you and me, we know that there is no any other place where the message of the additional truth of the fourth angel was received other than Southern California. That is where God gave it. And so when God is saying that he was preparing hearts and minds to receive, and he called it an important event in early writings, then we see that the place must be known. The time must be known. These are the things that we shall see as we now turn to the Shepherd's Road proper to get more on what the Lord himself shares concerning this wonderful exposition. All right, beloved. Our study now takes us to Shepherd's Road, Volume 1, Pocket Edition, and we're going to page 10, paragraph 2. Having laid the foundation that the people of God were supposed to move to the west, let us hear the language of the prophet when he begins to cement or prove that what was expected of them, having moved to the west, happened. So I read in your hearing. It says, in 1844, as all Seventh-day Adventists know, Sister White was given a vision of the 144,000, signalizing the sealing angels starting his ascent from the east. Revelation 7, verses 2 to 4. From then on, he was ascending, and the saints were awaiting his arrival. Maybe let me pause there. Who are these saints that were awaiting the arrival of the angel? And why were they ready? Why were they sure that something important is going to happen? Just basically what Testimonies for the Church Volume 1 was helping us to understand. That these SDAs, inspiration says, they should know that the angel started his ascent in 1844. And yet these SDAs were not there by 1844. As in name, Seventh-day Adventist, but as in human beings, they were part, at least, of those that were disappointed when their expected prediction did not happen the way they had thought. And so we know that the SDA Church was only organized in 1863. Now, God is saying they should know. They should know that Sister White was given a vision of the 144,000, signalizing the angels starting his ascent from the east. So you see, when we are looking at the Testimonies for the Church Volume 1 and discover that there was a message in relation to the east and the west, we see that the vision Sister White had was in Portland, Maine, east of the United States of America, showing that the angels, that was the signal to those people that the angel has started ascending from the east. And so those saints that were faithful, among them, beloved, you see, that is the beauty about history. We can see with our brothers that were disappointed, there were people like Edson. These are the people that committed themselves to God in prayer to say, Lord, we are disappointed. What must have happened? And so God communicated to them. And they started small. Eventually, they started to understand. Eventually, God physically wanted them to move to the west in order to receive the truth. And that truth that they will receive, we are told to say, it must increase greatly in power. And when it increases greatly in power, they were supposed to take it back to the east. So we see, beloved, that the east and the west are in relation to the two-horned beast dominion. That this is where the Lord wanted his work to be concentrated on. Because we see that if indeed the SDA knew but only the saints were awaiting his arrival. What 1T told us is this, that many a time when the fields are ripe and ready, very few get committed to the work of God. So the court further says, finally, in 1929, through the Sabbath school lessons, the Lord announced throughout the Seventh-day Adventist denomination that the angel had arrived. Then the scroll began to unroll, and the angel's presence to be felt by many of those who were agonizing for truth and righteousness. So you see, beloved, it is only those that were agonizing for truth and righteousness that were able to recognize and see that the thing that was happening within the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Sabbath school lessons of 1929 was no just ordinary thing. It was an extraordinary thing that the Lord, through those lessons, my brother Chirara talked about it, to say those Sabbath school lessons, which were dealing with the chapters, the last 13 chapters of Isaiah, were the announcement through which the Lord made that the angel of Revelation 7 had arrived. And then, just like Sister White said, that the message was to increase greatly in power. Here we are told to say, then the scroll began to unroll. So, meaning the message was beginning to be understood and appreciated by the people of God. So, you see, beloved, that for the shepherds was just to say, in 1844, as all Seventh-day Adventists know, Sister White was, it would be like speaking things that people would not understand. But as we have built up from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, if they were part and parcel of those that heeded the call of God, who knew that the work, the burden of the work was in the West, then these are the people who should have known. But of course, many a time, we see that even when people are working and things are happening, sometimes they tend to forget that the Lord is working, because we are men, we slumber a lot. Yeah, pretty much like we can put it with the Jews. They knew that the Messiah was going to be born. But instead of them seeking to understand what inspiration or scriptures was telling them how the Messiah would come, they began to manufacture how they wanted the Messiah to come and what to do. But surprisingly, the Lord in his mercies, through the Sabbath school lessons of 1929, he moved the minds of the people to dwell upon important subjects of the book of Isaiah. That was more like an announcement to them that indeed the scroll has begun to unroll. And only those who were anxious for truth and agonizing were able to recognize the truth. You see, beloved, when you are reading things like this, it says many. But when you go into the Shepherd's Road and look at the number of families that left and accepted the voice of God, that they were no longer to remain in beautiful Southern California, but an eastward course was to be only 12. Why? Why? God believes in humble beginnings. Let us be faithfully agonizing for truth and righteousness. Then we'll be numbered among the faithful few that will be privileged and blessed to work for the Lord. Beloved, I want us to consider something from Shepherd's Word, Volume 2, page This one is showing page 296, paragraph 4, in the soft copies, but those that are using the hard copies, you find that the statement would be found on page 297, paragraph 0. This is because some of these gadgets, they don't allow provisions for paragraph 0. So it's either, if the statement is short, they put it to the previous page. If it is long, they move everything to the next page. I'm sure you must have noticed that. So this I bring so that we understand something. You see that the angel of Revelation 7, his message is connected with the truth of the 144,000, and is the one that lands. Then his presence began to be felt. Now, I want us to see, because many of us sometimes we don't see the connection between the angel of Revelation 7 and the mighty river of Ezekiel 47. So, the prophet himself is the one that is going to connect those two, so that this quote that I'm about to read, we may see what he's talking about and why the eastward movement of the message is connected between Revelation 7 and that of Ezekiel 47. Okay, listen to this. It says, "It is remarkable to note how perfect these symbols are in each instance. This direction of the compass denotes that the message of the loud cry is to start eastward when it is first revealed." So, what is God talking about? He's talking about the flow of the river of Ezekiel 47 to say, the direction it is taking shows that when the message of the loud cry is first revealed, its duty is to start moving eastward. So we see that it was not to be permanently located on the western side. So I read that again, says, "It is remarkable to note how perfect these symbols are in each instance. This direction of the compass denotes that the message of the loud cry is to start eastward when it is first revealed. The church membership being largely east of California and across the Atlantic, naturally the message must start toward the east." Now, basically, beloved, if you have followed what Sister White's vision was and what the Shepherd's Rod now is bringing through the study of Ezekiel 47, the east and the west in connection between, being spoken about, or the connection between the two prophets, is showing that it is beginning in a specific place. Just like the ascension of the angel from the east, the vision was given in a specific place, Portland, Maine, east of the United States of America. So also we see that California was to be a place where the loud cry message was to originate from. This is beautiful how inspiration is putting dots together, that we may not miss the truth that the Lord is communicating. So we are told to say, the church membership being largely east of California and across the Atlantic, naturally the message must start towards the east. So, God knew that even when he commanded these people to say they should move from the east to the west, because that is where the burden of the work was, many did not do that. For if they had done, beloved, there is no way the Shepherd's Rod could say the membership of the church being largely east of California and across the Atlantic. So you see that God now is mindful of even those that are beyond the Atlantic, to say they too needed this truth that was to originate in California, which truth we are told is none other than the loud cry message. Okay? So we are told to say this symbolical prophecy reveals that the message of the loud cry is to originate in California. Now, look at this, beloved, why we have connected Shepherd's Road Volume 1 Pocket Edition with the Shepherd's Road Volume 2, page 296, paragraph 3, according to the gadgets, and 297, paragraph 0, according to the hard copy, is that God is speaking the same thing here, that the arrival of the angel of Revelation 7 in the west signals the coming in of the loud cry message. Then the mighty river of Ezekiel 47, by its direction and everything and the symbols involved therein, also symbolizes the arrival or the beginning, the starting point of the loud cry message. Say it must start in California. And so it says, thus fulfilling the prophetic words of the spirit of prophecy in a letter to Elder E. and Ross. I feel confident, Elder and Ross read the letter, that the brethren in Southern California will find a blessing in reviewing the teachings of the scripture concerning the 144,000 and bring to bear upon these teachings whatever light there may be in the published writings of the spirit of prophecy, and as prayerful consideration is given the matter in all its bearing, I believe that God will make the truth sufficiently clear to make possible the avoidance of needless and unprofitable questions not vital to the salvation of precious souls. So you see, beloved, that the angel of Revelation 17 has the seal of the 144,000. Then the mighty river of Ezekiel 47 has the direction and the origin, the place of origin for the message that was to be revealed concerning the 144,000 by the brethren in Southern California. So it is no accident, beloved, that God is speaking in the terms He is speaking. You see, when you read carefully what is being communicated, you see that basically the breakdown of the study of the mighty river of Ezekiel 47 is very, very impressive. It's very impressive if we took time to understand what God is communicating in it. Because when we begin to break down the symbols that are used in there, because our understanding of the truth, we are taught to say, it will be here a little, there a little, and then we have the composite whole. So we see that, beloved, when you break down Ezekiel 47, we will have no trouble understanding what the Lord is communicating there. Especially if we are just to consider, for instance, Ezekiel chapter 47, just verse 1. To break down the components that are given there, it will help us greatly. Maybe, seeing that the time has gone, let us adjourn here and hope to continue at an opportune time. But I was just like standing in for the time that we were given to Brother Chirara, and I thought to myself, say, since we share almost the same understanding on the headquarters of God being in Salem, I thought maybe I can just add to the few that he had started on as we progress. If in any of these courts have brought in those that are not on his cards and stuff like that, yeah, I beg to be helped and also to be enlightened, so that at the end of the day we continue to be focused on the truth and helping one another, as it were. So, if there will be questions or comments from these few portions that we have shared, at the appointed time, we shall be able to look at them and progress, as we have seen the connection between Revelation 7 and Ezekiel 47, that it is on the issue of the 144,000. Thank you and blessings to you all. Good morning, brothers and sisters. I just want to take opportunity of this morning hours, yeah, because the other study that we are supposed to be doing has not taken off. So, and looking at today being a preparation day, and in the evening maybe we'll have another Bible study, Zoom meeting with the brethren on the 11th chapter of Daniel. So I thought maybe I take maybe an hour or two early in the morning, just to speak a bit on the part of Ezekiel 47 that I feel we can share and understand a bit together, in continuing with where we left off studying yesterday. And so, in beginning, I just want us to look at the following quote, just to get some glimpses of what inspiration gives us. Because in terms of praying, I've done that just to lessen the time of people, because I know these are things that are seen at different times. So a prayer has been offered. It is just a matter of continuing. Yeah, so let us begin with the following quote. Okay, so we are reading from Shepherd's Road, Volume 1, page 244, paragraph 1. Here we want to see the encouraging words from inspiration on our part for need to study and how we can study. It says, "It is wonderful to note the inspiration of the scriptures. Perfect they are when their appointed time is come. Only at such an occasion are the scriptures grammatically correct. We cannot take up the entire chapters at this present time, but with the information already given, one can mark out the meaning of every verse with a little studious effort on his part." Yeah, that is the prophet was giving a lesson on the chapters of Micah. But the words that we are getting from here is that each one of us, with the help of the information already given, we are told to say we can understand verse by verse by a studious effort on our part, by getting from what inspiration has already provided. And so we see that with that kind of expression, the prophet continues to say, "Read the 6th and 7th chapters and note that past, present, and future tense are in perfect grammatical order when the events are properly understood. Observe the same rule in Micah, the 4th chapter, as explained on page 173 to 181. This is one of the rules to detect present truth. It would be impossible for us to publish in this volume all of the light that has come to us through these studies, but we hope to have them soon in another volume." So that is what the prophet gives as a counsel there, that when the event that is being talked about, its time has come. Those that are given or charged with the responsibility must take a studious effort at their disposal to do that wonderful thing. Okay. Okay, another quote that we can consider in the same breath or light is what is recorded to us in tract number 11, page 12, paragraph 1, which is under a subtitle saying a lesson or lesson. And it reads as follows: all present truth believers should now see the necessity of shunning every wind of doctrine, regardless how plausible or reasonable it may appear to be. Remember the words, behold, those that go towards the north country have quieted my spirit in the north country. See page 27 of tract number 2, the warning paradox, Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to 8. Then it gives now the wonderful question, says, get your doctrine, brother, sister, only from the golden bow. Then it says, see the Shepherd's Rod, volume 2. And be not like the waves of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Be not carried about by many winds of doctrine that are blowing wildly from every direction to cause you to lose your way to the everlasting kingdom. So we see, beloved, that inspiration is encouraging us to say our doctrine should proceed from the golden bow. So if we get what is found in the golden bow, then we are assured that we will not be tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine that will be blowing. Okay, and so here it is encouraging again to note, beloved, that for inspiration to show us that that which should be able to form our doctrine should be studied from Shepherd's Rod, volume 2, where the truth of the golden bow is discussed. We see that in the golden bow are two major instruments that are used to transfer or to transport the oil into the golden bow. So the golden bow constitutes of two interpretive prophets that are shown there, as it will be discussed later in details if times allow, or maybe I'm sure these we have all studied. All right, another quote that I want us to consider is coming to us from Counsels on Sabbath Schoolwork, page 34, paragraph 1, which gives an understanding on new light or revealed truth of God. And I read in your hearing says, new light will ever be revealed on the word of God to him who is in living connection with the Son of Righteousness. Let no one come to the conclusion that there is no more truth to be revealed. The diligent, prayerful seeker for truth will find precious rays of light yet to shine forth from the word of God. Many gems are yet scattered that are to be gathered together to become the property of the remnant people of God. But light is not given simply to be a strength to the church, but to be shed upon those who are in darkness. The people of God are to show forth the praises of him who hath called them out of darkness into his marvelous light. Christ has said of his people, ye are the light of the world, and it is the mission of the light to shine out and illuminate the darkness. So again, we see that God is saying that pretty much like what we quote. I like this quote, but I'm not going to use it now. I'll just paraphrase it, which says that we are asked to sink deep the shaft in the mine of truth. Now, imagine the mine is containing truth, but within that truth, we are asked to sink that shaft deeper into that truth
Meaning, we have a duty, beloved, of not being superficial in our study of the Word of God. So if we are surface readers, we are going to have the surface understanding. If we sink deeper, then we are going to have some deeper understanding of what God has given, provided we stick to the principles that God has told us that if we are to have doctrines, let them come forth from the golden bowl, and then we'll be free from trouble. So, Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 1 reads as follows. Afterward, he brought me again unto the door of the house, and behold, waters issued out from under the threshold of the house eastward. For the forefront of the house stood towards the east, and the waters came down from under from the right side of the house at the south side of the altar. There we see that God is giving uh, some things that need to be understood in their proper context. We see that God is saying He has a house, and in that house, it has the threshold or the entrance, and that entrance was standing towards the east. And so we are also told to say the forefront of the house, or the house was facing uh, towards the east. And then from there, we see that water came out of that house from the right side of the house at the south side of the altar. So, because we know the eastward and the eastward movement that we looked at when we quoted 2SR page 297 last night. So I will not be able to go back to that, because we are told to say this direction of the compass, explaining this, what we have seen, these movements. God told us that it is a symbolical prophecy revealing that the work of the loud cry message will start eastwards when it is first revealed. So that is our main interest. But now I want to discuss one thing that we normally overlook, and that is the last word in the verse, which is the altar. Okay, so, or outer. So I want us to look at what is the symbolical meaning of that outer in relation to what we discussed yesterday, so that we may be able to begin to build up nicely from there. Okay, so going to tract number 15, page 53, paragraph 1, gives us a picture of what an outer signifies or denotes. Here we are told to say, moreover, an outer denotes renewal of faith, reformation. So, inspiration now is telling us that an outer means a renewal of faith or reformation. Then we are further told to say that is what it meant to Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the instances they built their altars. Genesis 8:20, 12:8, 26:25, 35:14. So, we are told that an altar is a symbol of reformation. If you remember pretty well where we were discussing yesterday from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, we see that the Lord effected a reformation upon his people, and that the people of God were to physically move to the west in order to receive the truth. So we see that there was a reform that was effected in the church of God by them moving. Now, God is telling us something in connection with the revelation of the message of the loud cry to say, even so, people were supposed to move to the west. But in moving to the west, beloved, that was a symbol of reformation, because that is what a renewal of faith meant. They were to leave their homes they were to dedicate their gifts, their time, and their all. So we see that there was this kind of reformation that was effected at that time. And so, because people accepted that, we saw that 2SR, I mean, Shepherd's World Pocket Edition Volume 1, told us that they were privileged with the arrival of the angel, and the scroll began to unroll, or in short, they received the truth of God. So there's something that we'll be able to get in connection with what I'm trying to put across, beloved, so that you see that even Ezekiel 47 has its starting point from a certain place, as we saw uh, with what 2SR, page 297, paragraph 0 brought, or 296 in the gadgets, paragraph 3, was able to show us that this direction of the campus denotes that the loud cry message will have its origin from California. And then when it will have increased greatly in power, it will start its eastward course. So that even when we shall come to the point where the prophet now was able to be guided by this same understanding of the mighty river of Ezekiel 47, in choosing the future headquarters, we have no problem knowing what God is communicating to all of us. Okay, so going to page 52 of the same tract number 15, paragraph 1, we find the following information. It says, the certainty that the souls cried from under the altar, the place from which God's truth is dispensed, makes obvious that they were slain for their firmness in the word of God, and that for their faithfulness they were given white robes. They were accounted worthy of eternity. So, getting that information also, explaining what the altar is from the golden bowl, we see that the altar is a place where truth is dispensed. And so, we see, beloved, that reformation indeed is what God wanted. And those that were reforming, we are told to say they are the ones that were agonizing and praying for truth and righteousness. And it is to these that the scrolls began to unroll, and they began to feel the angel's presence among them. Okay, so we see that these points, I'm just summarizing here so that at least we get to the gist of the reason why we are getting all these important things, so that when we put them together, we may know what God is communicating. So coming back to Ezekiel 47, verse 1, having looked at the altar to say, inspiration says the altar is a symbol of reformation. Okay, we see that these waters issued from the south side of the altar, or reformation in short. So there was a reformation, but this reformation was in the south side of it. Now, when you look at what the prophet is giving, when we reread 2SR, page 296, paragraph 3, or those that are using the hard copies, you go to page 297, paragraph 0, you begin to understand what God is saying about the south side, the directions, because we are told to say these symbolical directions. So these directions are symbolical, or this prophecy is symbolical. But whatever it is symbolical of, it is denoting that when the message of the loud cry is first revealed, it has to start somewhere. And so the prophet will not miss a word. He will tell us exactly everything, so that it is in tandem with what we are getting from the prophecy in Ezekiel 47, verse 1, that there is the south side of the altar and everything else. So now, in the plainest statement, what is it that inspiration is talking about? All right, brothers and sisters, going to Shepherd's Road, page 296, paragraph 4, which we read, I want to bring this to our attention. It says, Then said he unto me, These waters issue out towards the east country, and go down into the desert, and go into the sea. Verse 8. Then it says, It is remarkable to note how perfect these symbols are in each instance. So God is telling us that the symbols and the directions that we see from Ezekiel 47's river, they are remarkable and perfect in each instance. So we are told to say this direction of the compass denotes that the message of the loud cry is to start eastward when it is first revealed. The church membership being largely east of California and across the Atlantic, naturally the message must start towards the east. This symbolical prophecy reveals that the message of the loud cry is to originate in California, thus fulfilling the prophetic words of the Spirit of Prophecy in a letter to Elder E. Andros. I feel confident, Elder Andros, that the brethren in Southern California will find a blessing in reviewing the teachings of the Scripture concerning the 144,000 and bringing to bear upon these teachings whatever light there may be in the published writings of the Spirit of Prophecy. And as prayerful consideration is given the matter in all its bearing, I believe that God will make the truth sufficiently clear to make possible the avoidance of needless and unprofitable questions not vital to the salvation of precious souls. So we see, beloved, that just like we are told that the brethren then, through the vision that was given to Sister White that we considered yesterday night, they were encouraged to go to the western side of the United States of America. But God was specific in the place and the time of the reception of the message of the sealing of the 144,000. And so we see that it tells us that it is the brethren in Southern California who will be blessed, especially that the Lord Himself is giving that instruction to say, we as a people are privileged now to know that there was actually a place where the message of God originated when it was first revealed. And since it is a blessing for all people, it must start eastwards. And this message, we are told, is a teaching concerning the 144,000. Which message we see that coincides with that of Revelation chapter 7. I know, maybe I can make even this statement now, which we'll be able to prove later. You see that just as Revelation chapter 7 brings out two facts and two important points, so also does the mighty river of Ezekiel 47. Revelation 7 tells us that when the sealing begins, it seals first the 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Judah. Oh, sorry, from the 12 tribes of Israel. Pardon me for that. And then, after that, a great multitude which no man could number. And for those of us that have studied Ezekiel 47, you find that it brings out the same thing that Revelation 7 is talking about. You see that when you look at the Ezekiel 47 chart, you have first the 144,000 representing the beginning of the river from the fountain to the east gate of the Lord's house, to say these are the 144,000. Then the part of the river, we are told it represents the great multitude which no man could number. So in essence, you see that Ezekiel 47 and Revelation chapter 7 are bringing out the same truths and the same fact, except one is the expansion of the other, because what Revelation 7 doesn't bring in details as to what happened and where the people are to be found, where they must be located. Revelation 47 with this information that the prophet now is giving us, we see that there is even a specific place, Southern California, that the brethren were to be privileged with that understanding and reception of that truth. So we see that this coincides well with Ezekiel 47 verse 1, where we see that actually that water was seen coming from the south side of the altar. So though they were to move to the west, but it was in Southern California, to be specific, that inspiration is saying that it is where the brethren will be privileged to receive and to review the teachings of the 144,000 in connection with the message that Sister White communicated to Elder E.E. and Ross. So you see that even before the Davidians were on the stage of action, God had published in a letter to Elder E.E. and Ross that Southern California was going to be a birthplace of the message of the loud cry. So that coincides well with the altar, which is a symbol of reformation. So those people who had reformed, who had accepted God's call to go to the west, went to the west, and as they received the truth there, we see that they must again start eastwards with that truth. So you see that it involves people and the reception of the message to complete this narrative that we are seeing. So it is people and the message that now must start eastward. Just like we see that on the part of the Reformation, it is people who were reformed and made to go to the west, even to dwell in tents, to do sacrifices there. And so because they were able to do that, they were privileged to review or to have an understanding of the 144,000 and everything in connection with the loud cry message. And so, beloved, just like God had given light already that the work, yes, should involve the people of God to move to the west, and the purpose was to receive the truth. But once they received the truth, they were no longer to remain in the west, but they must again start eastward to spread this wonderful truth. So it just as it involved people moving physically to the west, so we also see that in the fulfillment of all those things that Ellen White had been given in that vision, we see that when now the mantle fell to the Davidian movement, who received this truth with gladness and started out, they started in perfect order as God had instructed. So we turn our attention to one symbolic code, number 10, page 3, and we are going to read paragraph 1. It says, "It has been evident for some time that it would soon be necessary to seek a more central location for the office in order to serve the whole field efficiently. So, those at headquarters have been praying very earnestly over this matter for many months. And as they kept on praying for light, the Lord finally indicated definitely that beautiful Southern California was no longer to remain the center of his work for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, but an eastward course was to be seen in the stream from that fountain, which is to swell into the great river of Ezekiel's prophecy. And plans were soon formulated whereby a thorough search could be made in the territory indicated by the Lord where the future headquarters were to be found. So we see, beloved, that the first headquarters of the message, the sealing message, as it has been proven in Shepherd's Word Volume 2, that it is the brethren in Southern California that were privileged to start. Indeed, you see, beloved, imagine you fulfill the important task that God gave you to say, move to the west, specifically Southern California. And then God gives the information, he makes the truth to come. Then the scroll began to unroll. Everyone was appreciative of that. But the Lord himself now comes to his people and says, no. It is good that you have received this truth. But the vision that God had given, which now must be fulfilled, was that the people of God must start towards the east. And so God says beautiful Southern California was no longer to remain the center of the work for the lost sheep of Israel, but an eastward course was to be seen. So you see that the study of Ezekiel 47 does not only uh, give the truth concerning the sealing of the 144,000 and also the great multitude as the stream and the river in this instance, but it also gives or conveys the information that each directional movement has a significance in God's people finding a location of the headquarters of God on the eastward course. And so, in their eastward course, they came to what we would discover as where God Himself is saying that a search was given that they be able to go to a specific place where they must search a place where the future headquarters of God was to be located. So we come to one symbolic code number 10, page 1, paragraph 10. There, the Lord tells us something very important in connection with the prayers of the saints. I'll be able to share a few more quotes that will prove that indeed people prayed and God answered. And when they prayed, this is the answer that God gave them. It says, one symbolic code number 10, page 1, paragraph 10 says, therefore, He has given us one of His beautiful lakeside hills adjacent to Waco, Texas, a city of about 60,000, yet far enough from it to be away from the world and its evil environment, about 5 miles from the center of the city and about 2.5 miles from the city limits. There lies 189 acres of land for our camp. So we see that this is what the prophet was able to announce after it was given to them to pray and seek for the next location that the Lord was to give them. And so God landed them in Waco, Texas, where the future headquarters was to be found. So we see that as our friends were praying and committed everything to prayer, God answered them, and so the move was made to this place that was shown to them. Coming just a paragraph up above, we come to the same one symbolic code number 10, page 1, paragraph 9. Just like it was mentioned of Southern California, that is where God's message was to start. That is where those who are reforming in the West must be able to receive the truth. So it was also that in terms of the location of the future headquarters, after many prayers, the Lord also indicated definite places where the fulfillment was to be done. So reading, we are told, consequently, the Lone Star State, being in the midst of the land for both Americas, North and South, is the place where we must set the camp, so that the light may be equally diffused east and west, north and south. Moreover, the camp from where the battering rams are to be sent naturally must be centrally located, so that the distance between the rams and the camp may be cut down to 1/2, thus reducing the time and the cost for transportation and supplies as well as for mailing. We thank God for such a wise plan. So we see, beloved, that in order for the America itself, the Americas, that is the North and the South, to receive this truth, God chose for us the headquarters to be established in Waco, Texas. And God says that that headquarters was to be in the form of a camp. And as a camp, it is a place where battering rams were to be sent from. So you see that God is not necessarily saying that when you have an HQ, it should just be one in name, but it has something that it must be able to fulfill. It must be able to be sending out battering rams. Anyway, we'll discuss more when we shall come to the point of looking at how God's headquarters or camp must look like, because those also have specifications that we must be able to follow if we are to be consistent with truth. So we see, beloved, that here the Lord is showing us that indeed a time came that the people of God moved to their to the place where it was indicated that they should be able to build. But most of us think that when they moved, they went straight to the camp. Inspiration would tell us the following. So we read the following from one symbolic code number 16, page 1, paragraph 1. The prophet writes, "We are happy to announce that the headquarters office of the sealing message moved from Waco to Mount Carmel Center on September 29 to its new and permanent home location for the proclamation of the message of the true witness to the Laodiceans." Testimonies for the Church, volume 3, page 253. You see, this is very interesting that most of us tend to miss out what God is communicating. We see that, yes, they moved from beautiful Southern California to Waco, Texas. But before they could settle on Mount Carmel, they were in Waco. And so we are taught to say on September 29, that is when they had to make a move from Waco to Mount Carmel Center. So you see, beloved, that within Waco, they had two sites there that the prophet is sharing here, that they were based in Waco. Now, a time came that they moved from Waco to Mount Carmel Center, which was its permanent location. So meaning, wherever they were in Waco was a temporary place, because Mount Carmel Center was to be built and to become the camp or the permanent location as opposed to where they were, because it's not for me to tell as to whether they were in one place or they moved, because the prophet doesn't share that. All he shares is this, that there came a time that they were to move from Waco itself to go to Mount Carmel, which was also in Waco. Okay, so you see that they moved from a temporary place to their permanent place. So this is the permanency that is mentioned here. Not that it was to remain permanently the location of God, as we shall see as we continue on, beloved. So we see that the reason why now they moved to this center is that they now begin to do the serious work that God had committed to them, that of gathering people from Laodicea. Okay. So these are very, very important truths that the Lord is sharing. Okay. So just to read the other parts of the testimonies that we are sharing here, it says, "Therefore, we request all the brethren in present truth to approach the throne of grace with thanksgiving and praise to our Heavenly Father for His merciful kindness and many blessings. May we be true to our trust, so that our dear brethren who are in Laodicean sad deception, volume 3, page 252 to 253, may be drawn to the light of present truth before it is too late. For thus saith the Lord, if the watchman seeth the sword come upon the land, he blow the trumpet and warn the people. Then whosoever heareth the sound of the trumpet and taketh not warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet, and took not warning, his blood shall be upon him. But he that taketh warning shall deliver his soul. But if the watchman sees the sword come, and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come, and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity. But his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. So thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word at my mouth, and warn them from me. When I say unto the wicked, O wicked man, thou shalt surely die, if thou doest not speak to warn the wicked from his way, that wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand. So, beloved, you see that when the center was to be located in Mount Carmel, in Waco, and as the people of God moved from Waco to Mount Carmel, it dawned to them that the others' work that God told Ellen White to say in that vision, to say it is the work of those that will go to the west, it grew. People began to understand the responsibilities that they had over the souls of men in connection with the spread of the truth. And so there was need that they should be well organized, understanding this wonderful charge. And so we are told the following in Shepherd's Road. So we are told the following in Shepherd's Road, Volume 1, Pocket Edition, page 75, paragraph 3, that God's instruction now to them, which is totally different from the time that they received the message in the West, they were to be more organized. It says, set the camp also against it. That is, make a temporary lodging place for your workers, headquarters from which to carry on the work, and make preparations to remain there until you have conquered the city. This is the devout purpose in building Mount Carmel Center. This is its given goal. So God is telling us that in having a camp, which is also called headquarters, it must have lodging places or a lodging place for the workers. So workers must dwell there or must reside there. Meaning, therefore, beloved, that we shouldn't find pride if we may have a place, but God's lodging place, maybe places for people to live in are not there. Because when we will get to Shepherd's Road Volume 1, commenting on the same, you see that instead of saying lodging place, there you find that the Lord tells us that actually it is places. So we see that God's people must be well trained and settled in his headquarters, where they should be able now to plan the work and to make it move at his instruction. Because we are told to say, this work must remain until the city is conquered. So for as long as the city remains unconquered, and this city, we are told, as we read from the previous quote, is none other than the Laodicean church. That is what Mount Carmel's duty is, to conquer it, to bring it to surrender, to save God's people. And we know the number of God's people that are supposed to be saved from there in the sealing of the saints of God in the house of God, the 144,000. So we are to say, when we have headquarters, that must be our devout purpose. That is why we must have a Mount Carmel center. So we see that headquarters is synonymous with Mount Carmel, is synonymous with a camp. So you either have it called a camp, headquarters, or Mount Carmel. Okay, so we see that these are wonderful truths that the Lord is sharing with us, beloved. So we see that is how the headquarter thing now is connected with this eastward movement. So you cannot talk about the might river of Ezekiel without the understanding of the headquarters, because it is inspiration that said that in order for God to search out a new place where the future headquarters must be, God said, as they were praying, they were given the vision of the stream from the fountain to the east, as it were, to say this is the direction that they must be able to follow. So in searching out the headquarters of God, the study of Ezekiel 47 is incorporated. Okay, so the first one that I'll give of the two that I've promised, and then we'll be able to build up when we meet, is coming from 10 symbolic code number 1, page 3, paragraph 2, which says, now, again, with even greater emphasis toward reaching her goal, Mount Carmel Center makes the following announcement to all faithful Davidians who will realize that this good news is perhaps nothing short of a sign. Mount Carmel Center, by commencing to first sell its excess property, then the whole, is symbolically leading the way to the program that is outlined by the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. So we see, beloved, that though God directed his people to settle in Waco, Texas, and they thought that they had everything to do there for the closing work of God's business and that it would be finished there, the prophet was told to say there is yet something that was going to happen. And so God tells us that they were to sell first the excess land, then the whole. So meaning, beloved, that because inspiration showed that they were to move to the east and not to remain in the midst of the land forever. Though beautiful Southern California was beautiful, it was left. Though Waco was beautiful for situation and did great works because tracts and TGs were written there, it too, we are told that it reached a point where God himself gave a sign. And that sign, beloved, God is saying he was giving to faithful Davidians who should know that Mount Carmel Center, in reaching her goal, was giving a good news, which was not short of a sign. Imagine a good news, but when you look at the good news, it is saying that Mount Carmel Center, by commencing to first sell its excess property, then the whole, is symbolically leading out the way to the program that is outlined in the Bible, outlined by the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. So we see, beloved, that Mount Carmel was to be sold. Beautiful as it did its work, just as beautiful Southern California, it too, its days had come that it too should be sold. And so faithful Davidians needed to know that in starting the sale, Mount Carmel was initiating something very, very important to faithful Davidians. This is what God is projecting. But as like I said, I just gave this quote because there are things that we need to understand between this quote, should I say, between the establishment of Mount Carmel Center as they moved from Southern California to the excess land and the original land that they had. What necessitated them to start buying excess land, because we'll see that there was a thought that even the great multitude will be stationed at Waco, Texas, and we'll be able to understand all these things in context. But I'm just trying to bring to our attention that even as we are seeing that there came a time that they moved to the Lone Star State, beautiful for each situation, beautiful for each proclamation of the message of God, beautiful for its constructed structures that housed the lodging places of the battering rams, the teaching facilities, the place, everything to take care of the infirmy, the weak, and everything that was there. As you can see from Mount Carmel Training Center, how it was said to be beautiful. All that inspirational is saying that a time came that it should be sold. So for today, this is the last quote that I'm giving from 10 Symbolic Code number 1, page 6, paragraph 1, which says, "Be it, therefore, known that part of Mount Carmel property is being subdivided for high-class residences, beginning at the old peach orchard near Mount Carmel entrance." So you see, beloved, that when you go to Waco right now and you look at what used to be part of Mount Carmel before the buying back process by our brethren started, those that are situated at Waco now, you see that this is what prophecy said, that it was to be subdivided for those, not for God's property, but for high residential areas. They were selling off the land. So God instructed that this is how it was to be done, and that is what it was. So that even when our brethren that are back there, when they went back, they will be able to attest to say, yes, when they went, they started to buy back. And this is exactly as inspiration had said, that this is what Waco would become. So God is leading, and we shall be able to follow his leading. So may God help us as we continue to share these wonderful truths concerning how we may know God's headquarters and how we can be able to be in the center of the road without veering off or far from the concentrated blaze of God's light as we walk in the midst of the road. Okay. Good evening, brothers and sisters. I want to thank God that we have been given the opportunity to conclude the study I was giving. I know there are many other things that have come on the platform and many people that have been added who maybe are not supposed to be here and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we who are admins and everyone else can be able to do our best to see to it that at the end of the day we look at the main things that we are here for. And so without wasting people's time, I'll continue with my short sharing that is remaining, and then from there we will be able to give chance to others to continue. Thank you. Okay, yesterday I ended my presentation by looking at these two quotes that I've forwarded. Yeah, the first one came to us from 10 Symbolic Code number 1, page 3, paragraph 2, where the prophet was giving us an assurance that he was giving a message to faithful Davidians as an announcement. And this announcement was saying that now, again, with even greater emphasis towards reaching her goal, Mount Carmel Center makes the following announcement to all faithful Davidians who will realize that this good news is perhaps nothing short of a sign. Mount Carmel Center, by commencing to first sell its excess property, then the whole, is symbolically leading the way to the program that is outlined by the Bible and the spirit of prophecy in the words. So we see that the prophet was saying that Mount Carmel Center was destined to be sold. First, the excess property, and then the whole. Because we are told that this was a sign that the Lord was giving. Okay, and then we came to the second one, which was coming from 10 symbolic code number 1, page 6, paragraph 1, where we also told to say, be it therefore known that part of Mount Carmel property is being subdivided for high-class residences, beginning at the old peach orchard near the Mount Carmel entrance. So we see that these words were recorded in the last two symbolic codes that were written, which is symbolic code number 10, numbers 1 and 2. Those were the last ones that the prophet wrote, which are called the old codes. They end up to those two. So it is here that we see that the prophet made this announcement. And if we want now to look at these ones in details, we will be able to look at them sometime later, because here we are just trying to see that God is giving some understanding that we are to develop towards the setting of Mount Carmel, which we were told that this is where God had to relocate his people from the west into the midst of the Americas, and that now it was to be sold. Added to these codes, we go to the following. Okay, so we come to 10 symbolic code number 2, page 13, paragraph 1, where we have the following testimony of what began to transpire after the announcement was made in 10 symbolic code number 1, that things began to happen as they were prophesied. So I read in your hearing, says, yes, with the city coming to our very doors, the peach orchard must go. The peach orchard, what memories it brings of low bowing branches loaded with luscious fruit, of boys and girls, men and women, feeding the baskets with golden juicy butters. There was a plenty for everyone, and for almost 3 months of the year, we all enjoyed a feast. The cannery was a busy place those days, for thousands of quarts of peaches were packed for winter use, and still there were more. So the sailway was opened, and cars came from far and near to buy Mount Carmel peaches. So we see from this testimony that people began to remember how the peach orchard was fruitful, and that because the city limit was coming closer to Mount Carmel Center, there was a sale of the peach orchard, and all those memories were only to remain memories because the land was to be sold. So we see that these were testimonies that were given. Okay, so the next one. All right, so the next quote is the same 10 symbolic code number 2, page 18, paragraph 1. We have also this testimony that says, I am greatly impressed by the things I have seen and heard about the building up of Mount Carmel in the early days, and the progressive selling off of land tracts as its purpose is fulfilled. I am also impressed with the need of setting an example to all believers to do likewise, as the Lord shows the way. My interest was further aroused by the several sightly buildings, also by the huge amphitheaters which seats thousands of people and which can be made ready for use in few days. The reason I was impressed more by these things than by anything else was that I did not expect to find them, but it has proven to be another vivid witness to me that the Lord's hand is directing his work from this point. So, here we see that another witness comes to give a picture of what was happening at Mount Carmel. That just like the prophet gave the instruction that it is God's guidance that the sale must start and that the people of God should enter into the hunting campaign, at least for that time. So we see that there was what is recorded to us here in 10 symbolic code number 2, page 18, that indeed the building of Mount Carmel still remains something important. And as we saw partly from 10 symbolic code number 1, oh sorry, 1 symbolic code number 10, yes, sorry, 1 symbolic code number 10, okay, where we saw that the Lord was helping those at headquarters then in Southern California to begin to search for land, and eventually 1 symbolic code number 16 told us that they moved from Waco to Texas, showing that all that history, this witness is saying that he was able to see and understand through that record. But beyond that now, they saw that the Lord was now giving the instruction that the selling should continue as it were. Okay. So we see, beloved, I just want us to look at the first pages of the 10 symbolic code, number 1 and number 2. We want to get something that the prophet mentioned as to what had happened between the writings of 9 symbolic code and 10 symbolic code, so that we hear what he said, and then we see that having written 10 symbolic code number 2, the prophet later got sick and he died before he could from his mouth announce where the saints were to go after his death.